Student empowerment is definitely something that I'm very passionate about, and having the opportunity to learn more about your schools has been a privilege for all of us who were involved last year in student empowerment and the year before. We've seen really great examples, and you guys are adding to that. So with me today, I have Jeffrey Grant from Monument Academy and Matthew Tyson from Tapestry Public Charter Schools. And they are our finalists / winners for the big award in student empowerment with really great programs. So I had the opportunity to view your videos and look at the literature from your school. One of the things that was really intriguing for me when you talked about having to move your whole family into your school, I'm sure most people are curious about that. I know my family feels like they live at our school, but it's different when you physically actually go. So what was that like, and what kind of impact did that have on the school when you did that?
I made a decision, and it was in the moment. Dr. Jeffrey Grant, CEO, and I take that seriously, the fact that I am the chief executive officer, and I must lead by example, model what I expect. In the middle of COVID, still at the beginning, a lot of people are not in buildings, and with us being a residential school, and parents were sending their children back because I asked them to send them back. We could not allow learning loss to take place. Unfortunately, I had some children who were in 1- and 2-bedroom apartments with 11 siblings and 2 adults. They couldn't get Wi-Fi connectivity, unsafe neighborhoods. So I went to parents and said, I want to bring you back. I want to bring my babies back into the building. Now, we weren't in there like fully staffed in the building, but we had some other residents. And I just felt that it would be best if I showed everyone that it's safe. I come in and model. So I called my wife and one day and said, babe, I have something to tell you. We're moving into the school. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, we're moving into one of the apartments. Now, mind you, we were living nice. I have to say that. And she said, if that's what you have to do, then we're all coming. Because I did say, hey, listen, I'll stay here during the week and come on the weekends. And she said, if you're going, we're all going. And our youngest, who was just starting high school, we all went and we moved into the school with the children and the other staff members who were there. And again, just being a part of it for over 2 years really gave me a different perspective in terms of what was going on. I had just taken over the school 2 years prior and then had not completed a full year when the pandemic hit. So we moved in, lived, and when I say I lived there, I was the 24-hour security guard. I walked the building, checked doors, checked the parking lot, checked the neighborhood, but I also was there for children. It just gave me a whole different perspective on the experience of being a part of that piece. So I now understand not only my residential persons, staff members, but the kids themselves, And it allowed my families to feel safe and supported.
And you would think of anything that kind of was a revelation to you as a school leader at that point, of something that had to be fixed or something that you knew you just didn't see it coming once you kind of landed there with your family?
That's another great question. It's not the fact that I had surprises. I wanted to actually feel what everyone felt. When you're talking about living someplace and you want to call it home, it has to feel like home. Yeah. So I made changes to some of the apartments. I changed the way like just basic things, the doors, made sure they all had new appliances, always operational. Just made sure the different components were in place so it could truly feel like home. Purchased fireplaces for every apartment. I mean, not the fire, but the electric ones. And then that really impacted the children's mindsets because they would go open books, they would turn the fireplace in the winter and sit in front of it and live a life that they were not used to fireplaces in their homes. They didn't have homes, they had fireplaces. And they would turn off the TVs and would sit down in front of the fireplace and read on their iPads or their books. And that truly, I would say, hallmark fireplace style, they actually get to experience that now. So making it a home and not just a place where you're staying, but a home.
Creating the safety. You mentioned Maslow's hierarchy. That was something that I really took to because you've created a very positive environment where they can feel safe. And you
Yes.
have to feel safe in order to be empowered.
And it's funny,
You know
the
that.
fireplace were actually the children's ideas. I met with them and I said, let's take a tour to all of the different homes. And I took a group that other kids voted. They go. We sat in my office, and they gave me things that they wanted to have in their homes. They wanted more artwork. They wanted the fireplace because one home had a fireplace. I let them vote on it. Then I created competitions around it, and I would go in and walk in and quietly, and I would do thumbs up means you won, and you're going to get that piece this week. So we made it great. It made it fun. Dr. Grant is coming. Dr. Grant is coming. We're going to get a prize. But it enhanced their experience. They took care of home. They take care of it in terms of keeping space neat, and they can add components that actually make them feel engaged. But these were their decisions. I just supported it.
Yeah. And that's how you empower them. So you've done it. Okay. Matthew, over at Tapestry Charter Schools, you've talked a lot about the inclusion model and the way that students are grouped into their, I'm sure you call them
The houses, academies, all that stuff.
yeah, the academies. Tell us a little bit about the original premise of inclusion and why you feel, as a former ESE teacher, that it's important to mix neurodivergent and neurotypical students in the same classroom.
So I'll start with that part, and it's really that everyone can learn from each other. I had a new assistant principal start recently, and the last thing was kind of a tour of the building, and she went on the tour of the building, and she saw a kid having a meltdown in the hallway. So typically in a traditional high school, you would see a handful of people filming that child in the corner. Let's be real. But that's not what happened here. What they saw is one of our cool neurotypical kids who's on the basketball team and all the stuff come outside and talk to the kid and was like, hey, you got this, da da da, and just kind of took him. And it's not something you would have ever seen anywhere else. And she signed after that day and was like, that was why. It's because I wanted to see that actual. It's hard to see that in practice. A lot of times it's just an idea in our head of like, wouldn't inclusion be nice? But to see it close up, to see that these kids have been learning from each other by being exposed to each other for 7 years and by learning, we're all different. And that's the whole thing about neurotypical. Neurotypical is a box that society says is, if you're in the box, you're good. If you're not, you're not. I'm rubbing 2 rocks here because otherwise I'd be flailing my arms about. But like, it's those little things that just making a tiny difference and just allowing for the fact that what is neurotypical, why are we separating people by divisions and degrees of things when we all can learn together and we all can benefit from that learning with each other. But that ties into the houses and academies because that's they do a lot of more than their normal classes, a lot more project-based learning in those areas. So they're working really closely with a wide variety of kids who are all different from them, but are really into the same thing. And we pair that up with more intensive supports that are open to anyone that needs it, such as the PEERS program, PEERS. It's out of California. It's a social skills building program where you sit down around a table and you talk about just conversations. And this is something that I will tell you everybody needed before COVID, and they really, really needed after COVID, because try and get a group of children, just neurotypical children, and have them have a conversation about one thing, and that's hard to see. But to have our more neurodivergent students, it's even tougher. So we sit them around a table, we'll talk about basketball, right? The topic is basketball. Legos, no, the topic is basketball. Let's pull it back in. I know we're going to hit the Legos later, don't worry. But making sure that everybody is involved and supported as much as they possibly can. And it comes down to, when we have a new group of kids every year, we monitor the lunchroom. We see who's sitting alone. We see who, and for some children, that's their choice and it's a sensory thing and that's completely cool. But like, a lot of kids need to find that group. And at Tapestry, the most important thing we do is help kids find their group, whether that's, it all comes from them is the beauty of it. So when we start clubs, when we start sports, when we start everything, it comes from the children. The children come forward. We now have a Dungeons and Dragons club, a doll making club, everything under the sun because the kids wanted it. And so maybe my people are the doll making people. Maybe my people are the Dungeons and Dragons people. Maybe my people are the basketball people. It's okay. Your people can be whoever and it can mix up. But to have everybody together and to have everybody feel that sense of belonging is what we strive for.
Wow, that's That's really impactful. I know you and I spoke briefly before this, and we talked about that inclusion model. I have a K-8 school in Orlando. It's very similar to what you're describing. And one of the things, just kind of relating it back to the empowerment, when you're describing special needs students being counseled and mentored by the older students, they're being empowered to be their best selves. And then the older students are being empowered to be future leaders and community and have that community involvement. But they also carry with them a bit of compassion that sometimes they wouldn't typically get if it wasn't an inclusion model.
We try and plug them too. We have student ambassadors where you're plugged in. Anytime we have a tour, student ambassadors are leading that tour. Anytime I meet biweekly with the student representatives from each house and each academy, and they tell me what their houses are doing, what their academies are working on, what projects they're doing, what materials they need, and so they're the heads of everything. And so it all flows upwards through the kids to me, which is how it should be.
Tell us why you think it's important to have that live-in component that you have in with your middle school students in order for them to succeed.
It's very important for Monument's community to have that residential living component because before they've entered our school, they do not have a great sense of their worth, their value, and their power. By bringing them into the residential program, we're able to give them stability, support, and a voice. That's so important. They've been told what to do. They've been told what not to do, but they've rarely been asked, what do you want and what do you need? We give surveys to our children and our families. One is based on ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. We interview the children, we interview their parents. We make sure that our well-being department, our counselors, and therapists, they give us feedback on who the children are. I coined the term, learn the child, then teach. And the best way to get this information before you start teaching a child is to identify what that child needs. And that child can tell you what they need and what their experiences were. So giving them that residential program actually keeps them there, gives them additional time on task. It allows them then to build those relationships with people whom they trust. And that's extremely important. 50% of our student population for the last 5 years have had an IEP. The other 50% we've connected with therapeutic services to give them a voice so they can tell where they are. We allow them to have our phone numbers. Kids have our phone numbers and contact us. And when they do go home on the weekend, they do go home on the breaks. That residential component stabilizes them and allows them to then focus on the academics after we've healed them or as we're healing them. Trauma is real. You can't worry about calculating 2 + 2 if your stomach is growling. Those are facts. So the residential space allows us to have them stabilized, healing, using dialectical behavior therapeutic services. Within that program, we have them study mindfulness, being self-aware, self-regulation, and they incorporate those strategies and practices into their everyday decision-making. And they keep diary cards, and then they also do advisory. And then we have student government, and they vote for each other, and they vote for their representatives. And then they meet with the principal, they meet with me, and they meet with our dean of students, and they identify how they want to be celebrated. They create their norms in their homes and in their classrooms so that we can now show them that you have the power. You have the power to create your norms, you have the power to create your dynamics, and they hold each other accountable. That's a huge deal. And this is tough to say, but I'm not afraid to say it. What is considered normal for one community is not necessarily going to allow them to achieve when they go into the greater community.
Right.
And we have to give them that information because when they're devoid of that information, they're not going to be able to survive, let alone thrive as adults. So residential allows us to incorporate what I consider the conceptual framework of Max Weber, George Herbert Mead, symbolic interactionism, which is model what you expect. And that's through your actions, through your words, and then they are now fully immersed in this environment from grades 5 to 8.
Tapestry has been scoring very well on standardized testing. And there are some people in the audience who want to know what your secret sauce is about that. What do you think is the most important component of your academic success?
It's individualized learning, and it's getting to know the kids the moment they walk in the door. So when we have sixth graders, they come to us a lot of times from trauma-based environments in their past because of whatever. They got pulled out of school. We have stories where they got dragged out by the principal. A lot of times they come, and the parents come with their hackles up because they haven't been treated correctly before. So we have to first unlearn all of that stuff, because without them feeling accepted, without us taking care of those needs, it doesn't matter where they're at in math, because they're not going to be in a place to learn it. So we take care of those needs. We put in the supports that we need for them, and that can be in an official IEP, or it can be just something that we're doing for that kid because that's what they need. We have multiple sensory rooms in the building. We have children with break schedules. We have just all these different things that we put in place to make each situation be individually the optimal situation for learning for that child. And then once they're in the classroom, we're individualizing to a really high degree. You don't see the same thing in education anymore, where it's just, pitch the ball down the middle and 33% of the class gets it and everybody else is either already knows it or isn't ready to hear that yet. So instead, we have a lot of small group work, a lot of work with adaptive technology. We use artificial intelligence a lot. Because you can be the best math teacher in the world, but you cannot immediately assess in a room of 20 kids and know that they had a gap in second grade with fractions and it's going to still hurt them today. So AI is a tool that we utilize in the pocket of all of our teachers to make their jobs easier, and so that we can quickly assess student learning deficits and that type of thing, so that we can remediate those things and then get them back on the track to where they are, and then provide frequent updates to the child, because they'll get more excited than anyone when you see, look at your growth, look what you were expected to do, and look what you actually did. During COVID, our scores went up. Everyone else's scores plummeted, and during COVID, our scores went up. We have a model in place where every month or so, we have a virtual learning day for our kids where they learn at home on their one-to-one Chromebooks, and the teachers are engaged in professional development. This helps our teachers because we're able to keep them after school less. We're able to have them have a better work-life balance because we have these days built in where we're still doing our professional development. However, it's during these days, and it helps the children because they're then used to, okay, let's get on this, Chromebook. I know what to do at this point. So when the COVID shutdown happened, it took, I think, about a month for the district we're in to even get out technology to the kids. We hit the ground running like that Monday. We had the children logged in face-to-face with their teachers, and because we're small, because we're set up that way by design, we're able to reach out if we don't see a kid for a couple days during that time. We reached out, we got a hold of the parents, we got a hold of the families, we figured out how to give everybody what they needed during that time too. So I guess you can see through all of that just kind of the different ways that we're trying to help kids. And some of it too is breaking the model of what we expect for them, what the expectations are. I have a child, I can think of one of the kids that got me the most was, he's a self-contained child. He's a self-contained child. He can't do any test ever. Don't worry about him. And he's getting like 95s on end of course tests now, 4 years later, because we found how he learns best. And it wasn't auditory, like we pretend everybody can learn. And we found ways to get him what he needed, and he's excelling now because of that. So finding how best to hit every single individual child in that building and then giving them the resources to get there.
Wow. You guys have a lot of success stories for sure between the two of you. Two of the things that I noticed just off the bat, both of you are removing barriers in different models. And then that individualization is key. And I know all of the leaders in the room know that that's a pivotal piece to student achievement. You guys are doing it in different ways, but both doing it really well. So let's talk a little bit more deeply about student empowerment. I'd like for you guys to speak to one strategy at your school that you think is empowerment-based and also has the highest impact on your students.
Reality is that everyone does not have equitable exposure to content. Content is not in the textbooks. Content is in the real world. So we eschew textbooks, honestly. We expose them to the content by taking them out in the world, and we expose the world to our children. So we have a thematic planning approach with cross-curricular. We identified events in history, great inventions in science, and we do deep dives into it. We go out and experience the content. We do project-based learning. Many of my children have never flown on a plane. This will be the first time we've gotten through COVID. They're going to Puerto Rico. They're going to the rainforest. They're going to the Castilla. They go to Williamsburg. They go to Gettysburg. They go to Mount Vernon. They go to Philadelphia, where the content is. We're not going to get a textbook and read an excerpt from Charlotte's Web. You're going to read Charlotte's Web, and you're going to have character development, antagonist versus the protagonist. You're then actually going to do project-based learning and experience what it is that children and families experience who have the resources. Many of my children have never ventured outside of their communities. So when I take them down to the museums, the memorials, the monuments, Mount Vernon, George Washington's house, Gettysburg, Harper's Ferry, Colonial Williamsburg, when I took them to Williamsburg and I taught them, you're going to go to Yorktown and afterwards you're going to go to Busch Gardens. And when they got on that bus afterwards and they said, Dr. Grant, we enjoy Yorktown more than we enjoy Busch Gardens. Can you believe that? And I'm talking about 100% of our students enjoy experiencing the content, exposure. So we do cross-curricular planning, class to class, and we identify themes. The thematic planning approach, we do a theme for a full trimester. And that theme goes from class to class to class. Like laying down the law is a theme. You're looking at the laws in science. You're looking at the laws in social studies. You're looking at the algorithms in mathematics. And then you're going to read Animal Farm, where you created a government and you created your own laws. So that's how we've connected the content for them to understand where these laws exist. And the children do deep dives. They'll do presentations where they do one-act plays. They will create designs for houses. But our kids are now exposed and are part of the content. That is the biggest thing we can do because, again, as I stated before, conversations differ from household to household around the breakfast and dinner table. My children, we're going to talk about photosynthesis. We're going to talk about torts. We're going to talk about the neurosciences. My kids and my students, they may not have those opportunities, so I bring it to them. I let them experience and explore and discovery, and they absolutely love it. And I like to share, during the pandemic, when people were dropping, our kids, when it was embargoed, but I'm gonna say it now, we were #1 in growth in the city in ELA, #2 in math. Second year, #1 in growth in ELA. We dropped a little bit, #5 in math. Last year, we dropped a little bit, #2 in growth, and #7 in math. All of our children are hitting their goals. They're growing. Over 90% are growing using a map. And we're not just talking about BOI, EOI. We're talking about stretch goals. And our kids are enjoying learning. And again, because now they are exposed to the content.
I think for us, it's just showing the kids that it's their school. And showing them that the school will become what they want it to become. And that takes a wide range of things. It can go down to when we have events, they're the ones who are planning the events. They're the ones who are deciding what events they want to have. We have a food team where they're prepping the food for the events. We have a sound team who is learning how to do the sound for the events. We have a team of kids who do technology. We caught a child we've several times now caught children who learned how to hack through our firewalls. And so lovely. And it changes every year. But we flip these children and we say, okay, that's a really cool ability. Help us find these flaws in our system and let's use your powers for good. So instead of just, you're in trouble, you're written up, that's it. It's pulling them in, taking their talents and having them learn from somebody else. I have another child. I noticed his math scores were increased exceptionally this semester. And I was like, what's going on? I talked to the teacher. I was like, what's going on differently? And he was like, oh, that's my, I'm training him how to DJ. And if he finishes his work early, he gets to practice DJing in the back corner. So that child who had no interest in math whatsoever was doing really well at high school geometry simply because he wanted to learn in the back of that class. We brought in a ton of teachers, and that's really, I haven't mentioned that enough, but that's where it starts from, is finding teachers who believe in the mission of the school, who believe in putting the kid first, and who believe in using their talents to help that child. We brought in a bunch of people. Our music teachers are people who are in the music industry who can show, here's a producer for Usher, and bring them in and show them that these doors are open for them too. And all they need to do is, differentiate things to get to where they need to be. So showing them that these doors are open, showing them that the possibilities are there, and then giving them things like the surveys where they say, we want to have metalwork and fashion design. And now this year we have metalwork and fashion design for the first time. So they can see what you want. I will do my best to get you whatever you want. We can't have goats. Someone asked for that, but we're working on it. So just seeing, because they can see, kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They can see when you're giving them lip service and being like, cool, I'll get back to you later. And they can see when you're actually taking their concerns validly and you're treating them like human individuals. And that's I think the key, because when they see that, when they feel that respect, they understand that anything's possible for them too.
Wow, you guys have given us some really good ideas.